Hello everybody, this is your wrap-up video for week 4 in mental wellbeing for researchers. And as promised, this week we got a lot more personal and asked you to reflect on your own mental well-being now that you've got information from the previous weeks about what this concept means and the things generally that might pose some risk to mental well-being. So first of all, we wanted you to think about, for you specifically, what might be some of the factors both internally, so within yourself, the things that you think about, the things that you do, but also externally in your environment as well, that might pose some challenges to well-being, may even sabotage your well-being in certain places. Just to get a real reflection happening about those. And then we also wanted you to, start thinking around the practices that you may already put in place to take care of your well-being, but also hopefully maybe to give you some ideas or stretch your ideas about what you currently do, to think about how you're going to look after your mental well-being, both in the near future and I guess into the longer term. And certainly next week, in week 5, we're going to ask you to take an even more telescopic view and think about how you are going to, plan to take care of your mental well-being well into the future, whether or not you stay in academia. So I guess on those themes, we had 2 polls for this week. The first one was asking you to, reflect on what might be some of the early signs that you recognise in yourself about when your mental well-being may not be where you'd like it to be. And the thing that was endorsed by most people was that they start to feel a bit more emotional. And by emotional, we might be getting a bit more teary, but we could also mean feeling a bit more irritable, a bit angry, maybe get a bit more snappy with the people around you. Usually the people we get snappy with are the people who are most important to us because they feel a little bit safer. So it tends to be something that we might, maybe our work colleagues, but more often we tend to get a bit irritable with, say, like our family and friends. And so for that reason, often it's the people around us who can notice a lot earlier than we do that maybe things are not going very smoothly, and not just in a day-to-day basis, that maybe our mental well-being is needing to have some care and attention paid to it. So trust those other people when they start to send you those messages. They might be noticing things that you can't notice yourself as yet. The second most endorsed response was about feeling fatigue. So again, a really physical symptom of that mental well-being not being okay. And I think that illustrates really importantly the very close connections between the body and the psyche, I guess, in terms of mental well-being, that it's not something that's just all up on your head, that actually your body also feels when you're feeling pretty stressed and anxious. So it's really interesting that came out. And then the third thing was that withdrawing from social connections. And we've talked previously about how social connections are and staying, not everybody's an extrovert, not everybody likes to be around people all the time, but having some form of social connection is really important for mental well-being on an ongoing basis. And so perhaps it's natural then that one of the first signs that people might see is when they're starting to withdraw from that. So hopefully that little exercise got you thinking about that. We also asked in a fun way how long you thought that you might be able to talk to some colleagues without mentioning your researcher stress. And interestingly, about 48% of you, so almost half, said you could probably go maybe no more than 15 minutes. So either 5 minutes, no more than 5 minutes or no more than 15 minutes. Whereas 31% of you thought you could probably go for at least an hour. So that might be something to test that out in the coming weeks to see how you go. And before I finish off today, I just really want to encourage people to have a look at what people wrote in the discussion section around the things that you wrote them, to look after your mental well-being. Something that stood out for me, one, is that there's some really good strategies in there that people might want to have a look at. And the other thing is that a lot of the things that people talked about connect to that concept of mindfulness. And as I talked about in the unit, at least in the module, at least I think I did, is that mindfulness has become this kind of catchy term now that's thrown around to the point that I think some people are quite sick of it or might roll their eyes and groan. And I think that's because there are a lot of people who are out there trying to define it for us, maybe a lot of people making money about the idea of mindfulness, but really it's just about paying attention to what you're doing at any point in time. And I guess for mindfulness to be a particularly positive activity, it might be being able to pay attention to what you're doing in an activity that brings you some sort of rest or joy. And a lot of people mentioned, getting into nature, doing activities they like, spending time with people they enjoy spending time with. So, being able to be there in the moment in those activities or with those people, that's really what the hub of mindfulness is about. When you hear people going on about it, just keep that in mind. Anyway, that's the end of week 4. As I said, week 5, we take the scope out again. We ask you, we get you thinking about what you might be able to do if your mental well-being gets to a point where you really need some extra help, where you doing it on your own is not going to be enough, and where you might be able to go to get that extra help. And then we encourage you to start making some long-term plans, or at least considering what you might do in the long term to take care of your mental well-being. Next week's the last week, so thanks for hanging in here with me for this long, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week, the end of the wrap-up, end of that week, and end of this course. Thanks, everybody.